Thank you, Rita, and thank you to the MasterCard Foundation. Thank you to James and Helene from Equity Bank Group and Equity Bank Foundation. This is incredibly inspiring and moving for my father and for me, and we are grateful for whatever serendipitous part the Clinton Global Initiative played in bringing the partners together to enable all of us to be in this room today. And as Helene was telling me, there isn't a space large enough in Kenya to actually hold all of the Wings to Fly scholars, which is a pretty remarkable metric. I'm from Arkansas originally, which is a rather small state in the middle of the country. And in Arkansas, traditionally, when we are shared stories, if we're told stories, we have to share a story in return. And since we were gifted with the generous telling of so many stories this morning, I want to briefly share a story about my grandmother. My mother's mother was born to a teenage mother. So my great-grandmother was 15 years old. She was not married to my great-grandfather. She abandoned my grandmother for the first time when my grandmother was 3 years old. She left a meal card with my grandmother to the cafeteria downstairs from her apartment building, and she asked the local fire department to check in on my grandmother periodically. That pattern continued until my grandmother was about 8 years old, and her mother said, I can't do this any longer. So my grandmother got on a train by herself, looking after her then 2-year-old sister, to travel about 2,000 kilometers to Los Angeles from Chicago, where she'd been born. She then was looked after by her grandmother. When my grandmother turned 13, her grandmother, my great-grandmother, said, I can't do this any longer. You're 13, you're an adult, you need to go out and support yourself. So my grandmother got a job taking care of other people's children. She still was determined to go to high school. She got up every morning, helped take care of the 3 small children she was responsible for at 13. She ran 5 miles to go to school, and then she ran back 5 miles to be back at where she was living so that she could take care of the 3 children she was responsible for and put them to bed. She had a teacher in high school who mentored her, who told her that she was more than the product of her circumstances, who told her that she could create a different life for herself than what would have been the legacy of her grandmother and her mother. So fast forward, my grandmother meets my grandfather, they get married, and my grandmother creates a home full of love and possibility for my mother and her 2 younger brothers. My grandmother went to college in her 60s, and she got straight A's. And although she was born before women had the right to vote in the United States, she lived long enough to vote for her daughter for president. So I share that story because it's a story of one woman, and it's a story of a family, but it's also the story of a country. Some of you are already parents. Most of you will become parents. I don't think any of us have any idea what you will do with your lives in terms of your families, your communities, your country, or our world. And I certainly feel better about our world knowing all of you are in it. Thank you for sharing your stories. Thank you for what you're doing to not only reimagine Kenya, but reimagine our world.